Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
What did you tell my father? Shirley asked anxiously, as she was worried that he might have revealed her situation. He'll bring the real Imogen here for an internship and take you home tomorrow, Zacharias suddenly said. She blinked and was momentarily taken aback. Imogen hadn't informed her of this development. She couldn't believe her father had already made the arrangements. Zacharias looked at her and added, "We won't have many opportunities to meet again." At this moment, Shirley was eager to contact Imogen to find out the situation. She was also surprised that her father had managed to keep his temper and not scold her. He received a call from Richard at noon. He had already sorted out everything and even personally apologized to Zacharias. "Thank you for being understanding during this time, Mr. Flintstone. If Imogen is returning to work, I will gladly give back the internship opportunity to her," she said calmly. Zacharias stood up, and his tall figure exuded a sense of pressure. He squinted his eyes and said, "I don't want you to leave." She was taken aback. This wasn't something she had control over. If Imogen returned to the internship, she would have to leave. "Mr. Flintstone, we'll meet again someday in the future," Shirley consoled him. Since receiving Richard's call at noon, he had been thinking about how to keep her by his side. But even now, he hadn't come up with a workable solution. "I'll leave for now," Shirley said before quickly exiting the room and returning to her own. She picked up her phone and dialed Imogen's number. "Hello, Shirley. Imogen, how was your checkup? Is everything normal now?" "Yes. It's all fine. Last time, there was a mix-up in the blood samples at the medical examination center, and they mistakenly switched my blood with someone else's. Today, your father called me and told me to get ready to join him in Averna for work. Also, he asked me not to tell you yet." "I'm sorry." Imogen apologized on the other end. Shirley didn't blame her. After all, her father's orders were not to be disobeyed. She then asked, "How was my father's tone? Was he angry?" "I was really scared, but your father didn't say much. He just asked me to get ready and leave early the next morning," Imogen explained. "Don't worry. It was my idea. Come with my father tomorrow. The internship is relatively easy, so it won't be too tiring." "All right. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for helping me so much, Shirley. See you tomorrow." Shirley hung up the phone, checked the time, and realized it was already 11:30 p.m. It was too late to call her father now. She would talk to him tomorrow. After all, things had reached this point, and it was only fair to face the music. At this moment, a knock came at her door, and Shirley reached out to open it. Zacharias was standing outside. "Mr. Flintstone, is there something you need?" she asked curiously. "Did you talk to your father?" "No. I spoke with Imogen. She confirmed she's coming tomorrow. It's too late, so I won't disturb my father," Shirley replied honestly. Zacharias squinted his eyes. "It seems like you can't wait to leave my house." She blinked. "I wasn't supposed to be here in the first place. I'd like to take a leave tomorrow morning to buy a gift for you. Is that okay?" Shirley didn't want to work on her last day. He suddenly reached out and playfully tapped her head, causing her to wince. She couldn't understand why he did that. "Shirley, even if you leave here, we will meet again," Zacharias said in a hoarse voice before turning to leave. Shirley rubbed the spot on her head where he had tapped and thought to herself, "Mr. Flintstone, I don't want to meet you again." The next morning, Shirley, Zacharias, and Tony all came down to the dining room. "Mr. Tony, can you give me a ride somewhere later?" Shirley asked Tony. "Of course. I'm getting bored here, and I'd be happy to go out." He nodded eagerly. She was in a great mood. She looked at the man sipping coffee and reading the news on his tablet. He didn't even take a break for breakfast. After breakfast, Tony and Shirley went out. On the way, she couldn't help but ask him, "What does your uncle like?" He thought for a while before responding, "I'm not sure." She continued to ask, "If a girl wants to give a gift to a guy, what kind of things should she choose? A belt, a tie, or a watch? Maybe not a watch. Watches are considered unlucky as gifts." "Bracelets are a good option," Tony replied. He then playfully asked, "Are you planning to pick a gift for my uncle?" "Yes. I'm planning to get him a gift." "In that case, why not choose underwear?" He teased her. "Be serious," Shirley said while laughing. "All right. How about a bracelet?" "I know a shop that's known for bracelets that have been blessed by masters," Tony suggested. "Really? Will he like it?" "He'll like it as long as it's a gift from you," Tony replied. Shirley didn't have much confidence in that statement, but she thought that a bracelet was a good choice since Zacharias had personalized belts and ties already. So, Tony took her to a bracelet store and she was amazed by some of the prices she saw. However, she found one that she could afford. She picked up a purple sandalwood bracelet and examined it carefully. Then, she asked Tony, "What about this one?" "It's good. The color suits my uncle. It looks mature and dignified." "Let's go with this one, then." Shirley decided to choose this one. After making the purchase, Tony took her back to the residence. Shirley was in high spirits. Today she felt like she had been liberated. She felt free and was full of joy. Upon hearing from the servant that Zacharias was currently in the third-floor study, she went upstairs with the gift. After opening the door, she saw the man standing by the floor-to-ceiling window. He had already known that she was back. "Here. I picked a gift for you. Take a look and see if you like it," she said to him with a brighter and more playful demeanor. Zacharias reached out to take the gift bag from her, and from inside, he retrieved a wooden box. Inside the box was a bracelet, which he put on his wrist. It complemented his wristwatch nicely. "Nice. I like it." He readily accepted the gift. Shirley asked, "Do you know when my father and the others will arrive?" "They'll be here in about half an hour," Zacharias answered, since he was the one in contact with Richard. Her expression became visibly nervous and she said, "I'll go back to my room and pack my luggage then." As Zacharias watched her eager desire to leave, his heart was anxious, but he didn't know how to hold on to her. "Shirley, I want to ask you a question," he called out to her. Shirley turned to him while asking, "What's the question?" "Have you ever liked me during the time we spent together?" he inquired bluntly. She was initially surprised by the question but then answered seriously, "Mr. Flintstone, you have always been someone I deeply respect. Regardless of where I am in the future, I will remember your care for me. Goodbye." Having said that, she pushed the door and left, leaving him with an increasingly unpleasant expression on his face. Half an hour later, a black SUV arrived. Shirley had already placed her luggage in the living room. She hurried out to greet her father, who had stepped out of the front passenger seat. She started feeling anxious, and as a result, she spoke in a softer than usual voice. "Dad, you're here." As she looked around, she noticed Imogen getting out of the car. Imogen seemed nervous too, and the two of them exchanged glances. At this moment, Zacharias' imposing figure emerged from behind Shirley. When Imogen laid eyes on him, her gaze widened. Imogen was 3 years older than Shirley, so she had a more mature mindset and higher emotional awareness. She had seen Zacharias on television before, but she hadn't anticipated that seeing him in person would make her heart race. However, she suppressed all her emotions and didn't let them show. Mr. Lloyd Zacharias stepped forward and extended his hand to shake hands with Richard. "Mr. Flintstone." Richard reciprocated the handshake. My daughter has been quite willful. I apologize for any trouble she may have caused you. Not at all. Please come in and have some tea, Zacharias replied while showing particular respect toward Richard. Richard turned his gaze to his daughter and sighed with exasperation before entering the house. Imogen took a step forward and held on to Shirley. Shirley, thank you. Don't mention it, Shirley replied. Imogen then asked, is it my duty to protect Mr. Flintstone 24/7? Shirley nodded. Yes. Currently, I've been assigned to work in this residence. Imogen's heart leaped with joy when she heard that. So, she was taking over Shirley's job? Shirley felt a knot in her stomach as she was afraid to enter the hall. She held Imogen's hand and mentally prepared herself, because she was about to face her father's scolding in front of Zacharias. Shirley, let's go inside, Imogen said to her. It was cold outside, and what was more, she was very interested in the important figure inside. After taking a deep breath, Shirley nodded and said, all right. Let's go inside. She pushed the door open and allowed Imogen to enter first. She was like a child who had done something wrong as she obediently stood behind her father. Although there was an age gap between her and Zacharias, his status and authority were evident, making him and Richard appear equally powerful. Mr. Flintstone, Shirley has caused you trouble. It's all my fault. I've spoiled her all her life, Richard said as he was filled with self-blame. Zacharias' gaze on Shirley held an indulgent and affectionate look as if he was treating her like his junior. Don't worry about it. Miss Lloyd has been inconvenienced here for so many days, and I feel guilty about it too, Zacharias said with a smile. Even after receiving the call from Richard, he made every effort to keep Shirley here. However, he knew he couldn't force her to stay. There was no reason for her to stay anymore. If Richard wanted to take his daughter with him, he would definitely be able to. Besides, Zacharias' current status made it inconvenient for him to offend the Lloyd family. Moreover, he held great respect for Richard as his elder. Even though he himself was powerful, he wouldn't dare to be disrespectful to Richard. Shirley, why don't you apologize to Mr. Flintstone sincerely, Richard said to his daughter. Shirley exhibited the demeanor of a young girl in front of her father. She hadn't even apologized yet, but the gentleman had already forgiven her. There's no need to apologize. This was just a minor matter, Zacharias said with a smile. Imogen, who was standing by the side, also lowered her head and said to Zacharias, Mr. Flintstone, I should apologize to you as well. Zacharias finally looked at Imogen and gave a slight nod, indicating that there was no need to bring up the matter again. Imogen immediately stepped back. Zacharias' imposing aura made her cautious about displaying any emotions. She also felt that Zacharias treated Shirley with special attention, but of course, that was likely because of Shirley's identity. Dad, when are we leaving? Shirley asked her father. She hoped to avoid being scolded in front of Zacharias. Richard glanced at his daughter and sighed. Where do you want to go? I want to go back home. I miss Mom, Shirley said with a smile. Miss Lloyd, are you in a hurry to go home? I wanted to invite Mr. Lloyd to have dinner together tonight. Zacharias smiled and looked at Shirley. His deep gaze revealed a hint of reluctance. Mr. Flintstone, there's no need for a meal. My father is very busy. Shirley waved her hand and hinted at her father. Right, Dad? Since Shirley was Richard's daughter, he instantly understood the look he gave her. We should have this meal, but it should be my treat, Richard said. Zacharias smiled and said, Mr. Lloyd, let's have dinner before you go then. Shirley was the most anxious of all. She hadn't anticipated that her father would dine with Zacharias. She was eager to leave as she knew that the longer they stayed, the more likely her father would scold her. Dad, let me put my luggage in the car. We'll go to Grandma's house first, and then we can have dinner later." Shirley was already eager to leave. It wasn't that she didn't like it here, but because she knew getting scolded was inevitable. Her father must be very angry, and she didn't want to receive a scolding from him before Zacharias, so she hurriedly pulled her father away. "Don't move your things first," Richard said. Shirley was taken aback and asked, "Why?" Turning to look at his daughter, he said sternly, "Starting from now, you will intern here with Imogen." Her beautiful eyes widened in disbelief as she listened to her father's words. Meanwhile, Zacharias was also surprised, but the corners of his mouth couldn't help but twitch as if he were suppressing his smile. "That's great. Now, that girl has no escape." Imogen also looked at Richard in surprise. She then looked at Shirley, not expecting they would be interning together. Yet, Shirley was unwilling to intern here anymore, so she disregarded Zacharias' presence and held her father's arm. "Dad, let's talk outside." "There's no need to talk any further. Your internship documents have been sent over, so you must finish your 3-month internship here," Richard said firmly, thinking this internship could give his daughter a chance to grow up. Shirley instantly understood her father was being serious and was really going to put her through this internship. Also, she could sense that this was her father's punishment for her. "Shirley, that's great. We can intern together," Imogen cheered. Upon hearing Imogen's words, Shirley thought she now had another friend during her internship and smiled at Imogen while nodding. "Yes, let's intern together." "Dad, can I ask for my own position?" "I want to intern in the office," Shirley said to her father, thinking about whether her father would be willing to arrange an internal transfer for her as she didn't want to continue being Zacharias' bodyguard. However, Richard rejected her. "You can discuss this matter with Mr. Flintstone. It's not appropriate for me to interfere with this matter." Once that was said, he glanced at his watch and said to Zacharias, "Mr. Flintstone, I have something to attend to. I'll leave first." Then, he turned back to his daughter. "Good luck with your internship." "Take care, Mr. Lloyd." Zacharias got up, wanting to send Richard off. At that moment, Shirley spoke up first. "Mr. Flintstone, let me see my dad out." Afterward, she quickly followed behind her father. Once they were out of the house, she held on to her father. "Dad, how could you arrange for me to intern here without asking me? Even if you want me to do an internship, can't you arrange for me to intern at my great-uncle's office?" Shirley asked in frustration. "How could you still make demands? Don't you know how serious this is? You would have been sent to the military court if this had gotten any more serious. By then, even I can't protect you," Richard lectured sternly. Shirley bowed her head, obediently receiving the scolding. "What should I say about you? I've been too indulgent with you, which has led to your unruly character. You should stay with Mr. Flintstone so that he can tone down your character," Richard said. "Dad, I'm sorry, I was wrong." Shirley admitted her mistake. Richard sighed. In fact, his daughter's behavior had fully demonstrated her capability. He wouldn't have discovered that his daughter was here if his uncle hadn't notified him. "You are indeed quite capable, but you've used your capabilities in the wrong place. I am proud of you and always will be." Richard patted his daughter's shoulder. His daughter had grown up and could shoulder her own responsibilities. In the meantime, Shirley also choked up. She had always been like a child when she was around her father. She nodded. "Okay, I promise you that I will do my best while interning here." Though Richard was unwilling to let his daughter suffer difficulties, he must let her grow up and find her own value and goal in life. Only that way could her life be more meaningful. "Call me if you need anything." Then, he left after saying that. Richard knew his daughter was quite bold and wasn't one to back down easily. Therefore, he wasn't worried about her being mistreated but hoped she wouldn't get into any more trouble. He rolled down his window to glance at his daughter again before leaving. In the meantime, Zacharias looked out through the floor-to-ceiling windows at the tall and slender figure outside, completely forgetting that another woman was beside him. Although Imogen was afraid to look directly at Zacharias, she knew his gaze was fixed on Shirley outside. Being a woman, she had keen senses and instantly understood something. Zacharias liked Shirley. Imogen suddenly thought of something. If only something hadn't gone wrong with her medical report. That way, she would be able to appear beside Zacharias sooner and become his personal bodyguard. Pushing the door open and entering the room, Shirley approached Zacharias and said, "Mr. Flintstone, I'll bring Imogen to the dormitory area for registration." "Go ahead." Zacharias' lips curved up into a smile as he was in a surprisingly good mood. Shirley turned to Imogen. "Imogen, let's go. I'll take you there, and you can take your uniform and ID card on the way." Imogen nodded while saying to Zacharias, "Mr. Flintstone, we'll head over there first." After coming outside, Shirley put the luggage into one of the shuttle cars in the courtyard before driving to the dormitory area. While they were inside the shuttle car, Imogen asked, "Shirley, do you not like it here?" "It's not that bad," Shirley replied with a smile. "But it seemed like you didn't want to stay here just now, and with your status and background, you could easily get a better internship opportunity." "All you need is for your father to say the word," Imogen said, hoping Shirley could leave. She didn't want Shirley to intern here because Shirley had special treatment here, and she couldn't help but feel envious. After a sigh, Shirley explained, "I wish for that too, but my dad insists that I intern here. I have no choice. I have to listen to my dad." "Why does he insist that you intern here?" Imogen pretended to be surprised as she asked. "Maybe because I caused some trouble here, so he wants me to make up for it." That was the only reason Shirley could think of. "Shirley, we're in this together, so our internship days won't get too boring." Imogen immediately comforted her. Nodding, Shirley agreed, "Yes, with you here, I won't feel lonely." "I can see that Mr. Flintstone also likes you," Imogen suddenly added. Upon hearing that, Shirley felt her cheeks heat up despite being in the cold breeze. Even her ears were slightly pink. However, she couldn't let anyone know about what had happened between her and Zacharias, so she explained, "Imogen, don't misunderstand us. Mr. Flintstone and I only have a professional relationship, more of a boss and employee dynamic. It's probably because I've been working with him for a while, so he treats me well." Yet, Imogen only believed what she saw and not Shirley's explanation. Moreover, she had gotten to know Shirley very well back at the military base. Imogen fought tooth and nail for what she could get, while Shirley effortlessly had it all. That was how unjust this world was, so Imogen learned one thing: to become friends with Shirley. Imogen succeeded because she and Shirley were best friends at the military base. "If you put it that way, Mr. Flintstone is quite easy to get along with," Imogen remarked. Shirley cheered her on, "Imogen, your internship will be a smooth sail as long as you work hard." Pursing her lips into a smile, Imogen said, "I hope so. But I have no other intentions except to finish my internship." Shirley brought Imogen to Roy for registration but didn't expect Zacharias to have already told Roy everything. Although Roy knew Shirley had temporarily interned in Imogen's place for some time, he kept quiet about it. Other than that, he also received a new employee registration document via email. Once Roy opened the email, he discovered it was a notice about Shirley's internship. Seeing her information, he was shocked and finally understood why Shirley would appear with the president. "Mr. Barlow, I'm sorry." Shirley apologized to Roy. Roy smiled casually. "It's fine. We're all on the same team." After accompanying Imogen in going through the registration process, Shirley accompanied the former to her dormitory. Looking at the nice and comfortable dormitory, Imogen couldn't help but ask curiously, "Shirley, where are you staying?" Shirley explained, since Mr. Flintstone was previously injured, I'm currently staying at his house so that it's easy for me to take care of him. Imogen asked, did he specifically ask for you to stay there? Not wanting to seem too special, Shirley explained, no. There was previously another colleague staying there with me, but she was transferred away for some reason. Imogen nodded. I really hope I can take care of Mr. Flintstone with you. You should wait and see what Mr. Barlow arranges for you. Just as Shirley finished speaking, her phone rang. When she looked at it, she saw a message written in a demanding tone. Come back now. It was from Zacharias. Shirley sighed inside as she thought that man might want to mock her. Imogen, I need to return to the Flintstone residence. Call me if you need anything. Sure. Go ahead. Imogen smiled as she got up to send Shirley off. As Imogen watched Shirley leave, her eyes were filled with admiration, but there was also envy behind the admiration. She knew how to hide her emotions well. Being from an ordinary family, she wanted to have a better life, so she had to learn to hide her emotions and do what she could to gain a better future. Shirley drove the shuttle back to the Flintstone residence. When she opened the door to the hall, she saw Zacharias sitting on the couch, watching the news. Then, she looked at her luggage in the corner of the lobby and approached Zacharias. Mr. Flintstone, I'll be returning to the dormitory today. Turning off the television, Zacharias raised an eyebrow. Who gave you permission to move out of my house? My internship here has officially begun, so I naturally have to stay at the dormitory, Shirley said confidently. Zacharias suddenly smiled, his gaze fixed on her. So, I have the absolute right to supervise you. You can point out where I've done wrong, and I'll correct it, Shirley rebuked fearlessly. What can he do about me? Move your things back to your room. From now on, you are to personally protect me round the clock, Zacharias demanded sternly. Shirley was speechless. Not only does he want me to protect him 24/7, but he also wants me to personally protect him? Mr. Flintstone, your home is very safe, so there's no need for me to stay by your side and protect you. Shirley thought the man was asking for too much. With narrowed eyes, Zacharias glanced at her imposingly. Miss Lloyd, I have the authority to assign you any task. Feeling her cheeks warming up, Shirley firmly stated, I won't do anything that crosses the line. Zacharias gave her a disdainful look. Even if you want to do that, I may not give you the chance. Not wanting to discuss this matter further, Shirley stood up and picked up her suitcase to head upstairs, not expecting to be unable to escape and still needing to suffer oppression from that man. Tony stretched lazily as he came from the other side of the corridor on the second floor. Seeing Shirley carrying her luggage, he exclaimed, Goddess, are you moving out? Geez, how unmanly of Uncle Zacharias. Why isn't he helping you with your luggage? Come on, I'll help you. Once Tony finished, he was about to come forward. However, Shirley rejected his offer. No, thank you. Afterward, Shirley went back to her room and returned her clothes to the closet. From today onward, she was officially a member of the Flintstone residence's security team. Right then, her phone rang. She saw it was from her mother, so she quickly answered the call. Hey, Mom. Shirley, I heard from your dad that you've started your internship at the Flintstone residence. Just focus on doing a good job. Mom, is this Dad's decision? Why didn't he discuss it with me beforehand? Didn't you also act on your own? Angela retorted. This incident almost scared her out of her wits. Her daughter not only tampered with the system's name list but also lied to them about taking care of her grandmother, only to secretly intern at the vice president's residence. Mom, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done what I did, Shirley apologized. All right, let's put this behind us. Luckily, Mr. Flintstone didn't hold you responsible, or else you'd be in trouble. Angela also breathed a sigh of relief, knowing her daughter had been too reckless. If Zacharias had pursued the matter, it wouldn't have been easy for Shirley to avoid punishment. Hearing that, Shirley felt her heart skip a beat and realized she had made a huge mistake. "Mom, you and Dad can rest assured. I will do my best while interning here." She dared not ask for more and hoped working hard during her internship could appease her parents. Also, watch your temper when you're with Mr. Flintstone. That is not your home. Angela reminded her daughter. "I understand. Don't think that you can do anything you want because of your father and great-uncle's status. You have to know your place." Shirley felt her heart tremble. Indeed, she had thrown several tantrums before Zacharias, and now that her mother brought it up, it seemed like she didn't know her place. "All right, Mom. I will work hard during this internship," Shirley promised. After ending the call with her mother, Shirley changed into her uniform and pulled the door open. When she returned downstairs, she sternly spoke to the man who was watching the TV on the couch. "Mr. Flintstone, I haven't been very respectful before. From now on, I will listen to your orders and carry them out without asking any questions." In the meantime, Zacharias thought she was acting strange today, but he liked hearing those words. "Are you sure?" He raised a brow, indicating his skepticism. "I will personally protect you round the clock." Shirley carried out the order the man had previously given her. Zacharias' lips were about to give away his true emotions, but he managed to hold back his smile. "Very well. I look forward to seeing how you'll perform tonight." At that moment, Zacharias' phone started to ring. When he glanced at it, he informed her, "It's your father." Shirley put her hand behind her back, saying nothing. Meanwhile, Zacharias warmly answered the call. "Hey, Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Flintstone, something urgent came up, and I must return to the military base. I'll treat you to a meal next time." "Sure. Let's make an appointment for another day," Zacharias replied. Richard didn't mention his daughter and ended the call, so Zacharias turned to Shirley and told her, "Your dad has something urgent to tend to and needs to return to the military base." Shirley thought, Dad might not have something urgent to do. He just wants to avoid this meal. He doesn't like mingling with people. After looking at the time, Zacharias noticed it was about time for lunch, so he got up. "Accompany me for lunch." Shirley frowned. "It's inappropriate for me to have a meal with you." Zacharias was not used to her suddenly asserting her position so formally. "This is an order, so you must comply," Zacharias ordered with narrowed eyes. In the end, Shirley could only reply, "Yes." Therefore, Roy arranged a convoy for Zacharias to head out while Shirley got into the same car as him. Meanwhile, Imogen, who had been standing by the dormitory, just happened to see the leaving convoy and couldn't help but feel curious. When would she be able to become a member of the convoy and stay beside Zacharias, as well as protect him and make her own achievements? Imogen's plans for her future included the option of using marriage as a tool to elevate her life to another level. Therefore, her marriage was her stepping stone. When she saw Zacharias for the first time, a thought emerged in her mind. After all, nothing was impossible in this world. At the restaurant, Shirley sat upright before Zacharias. She gazed at the man, who was ordering his food. Once Zacharias was done ordering, he got up and came behind Shirley. Shirley immediately got up, but the man suddenly bent over and leaned closer to her the next moment. Shirley took a step back in shock while Zacharias chuckled. "Are you afraid of me?" Glaring at him with her pretty eyes, Shirley grumbled silently, "Is this man making fun of me? While we're outside, you're no longer my bodyguard but Miss Lloyd." "Let's sit down and have a meal as equals," Zacharias said. Stunned, Shirley asked, "Is this also an order?" "Yes. I am ordering you." Zacharias nodded. Releasing a slight breath of relief, Shirley agreed, fine. But don't you complain to my father and say I'm slacking off. Zacharias nodded and promised, don't worry. I will sign my name on your internship documents. Upon hearing that, Shirley felt relieved and sat down. The man elegantly poured her a glass of wine. Relax. You seem very nervous. Shirley immediately put her guard up after seeing the wine, as she wasn't a good drinker. I can't drink wine, so I'll have tea instead. Once she said so, she poured herself a cup of tea. After sitting down, Zacharias picked up the wine glass and took a sip. He was in an exceptionally good mood today. Initially, he thought she was going to leave, but he didn't expect the Lloyds would let her stay with him. Though she would only be staying for 3 months, that period was very precious to him, and he vowed to make the young woman fall in love with him during this time. While they were having lunch, the restaurant was very quiet. Since both of them were extremely well-mannered, the place seemed even quieter. Zacharias' gaze occasionally drifted toward the young woman opposite him. He looked at her as if he was appreciating a piece of art, an art that constantly stirred up his possessive instincts. He had encountered many women and numerous admirers, but the woman before him was the only one who truly ignited his desire. The urge to conquer her was surging inside him at any given moment. I'm full, so I'll wait for you outside. Shirley spoke and quickly got up. The uniform she wore accentuated her waist and legs, making her look slim but also bold. Zacharias didn't get up immediately but sat there and let out a light sigh. Getting to his position wasn't that difficult, but why was pursuing a woman so difficult? At the thought of that woman standing outside the restaurant in the cold wind, he immediately withdrew his thoughts and grabbed his phone before heading outside. Indeed, Shirley was standing beside the car. There was suddenly a gust of cold wind, making her delicate figure appear even more fragile. He quickly made his way over and said to her, "Get in the car." Shirley nodded, and the others quickly got inside the car. When Shirley got in, she felt a warm, large hand touch her hands that were on her knees. Just as she pulled her hand away, the man turned to look at her, thinking, just as I thought. Her hands are so cold. In the future, I shouldn't take her out on such days and let her stay at home where it's warmer. The convoy headed toward the Flintstone residence. Once Zacharias returned home, he immediately went to his study, where Freddie awaited him. Since he was injured, he had chosen to work at home and postponed several external tasks. Shirley held a cup of tea and knocked on the door before sending it into the study, but just as she was about to leave, Zacharias suddenly called out to her, "You don't have to leave. Sit on the couch and read a book." Stunned, Shirley spoke up. "I'll wait by the door." "Stay with me." The man gave her a brief glance and demanded. Shirley nodded and sat on the couch before taking a philosophy book from the nearby pile and reading it. Meanwhile, Zacharias became more relaxed as he worked. Besides, with the girl within his sight, he no longer needed to divert his thoughts to think about her. Just a brief glance. When he took a break from work was enough to alleviate his fatigue. As time passed, it was soon 10 p.m. "Come to my room later and help me change my bandages," the man instructed. Shirley put away the book. "Sure. When will you be finished with work?" "Around 11 p.m. "You may rest for a while," Zacharias replied. Shirley felt a bit drowsy as she read the book, so she decided to go back to her room to rest and clear her mind. At exactly 11 p.m., she knocked on the door of Zacharias' master bedroom. When the door opened, the man, who had been dressed in formal attire just a while ago, was now wearing a loose cotton robe with black and gold trim, exuding a kingly aura. For a moment, her breath caught in her throat. Cole gave her a sense of righteousness and integrity, but this man often exuded a strong pheromonal attraction. Both men had strong physiques, but they evoked different feelings in her. "Come in," he said. With that, Shirley entered the room, and as Zacharias walked toward the couch, he untied the belt of his robe. Seeing that, she hurriedly said, "You don't need to undress." "Are you afraid I'll charm you?" he said with that smile. His remark made her speechless for a second. "If I tell others that the vice president is frivolous, I'll probably face a lot of rebuttals." In her silence, he sat on the couch, lifting his sleeve to reveal the wound on his arm. Immediately, Shirley crouched down beside him, carrying a medical kit. She had learned nursing skills in the military, so she could easily handle such situations. Zacharias' arm was strong and muscular, and even though the wound was serious, it didn't seem to have affected his muscles or bones. When she cut away the old bandage and saw the black stitches, which resembled the legs of a centipede, she felt it was somewhat terrifying. With an antiseptic solution, she disinfected his wound and then applied a healing ointment prescribed by a doctor. Finally, she used a fresh bandage to wrap up his wound. As his gaze moved from her face downward, he recalled that night when he held the back of her head and kissed her face so freely. Suddenly, heat surged in his lower abdomen. Shirley was lowering her head, busy organizing her medical kit, and the man's legs were wide open right in front of her. Since she was naturally sensitive, when she saw what was swelling beneath his robe, her breath hitched, and she quickly averted her eyes. Somewhat helpless, he looked at himself and said to the girl, who had shyly turned her head away, "Don't mind it." The "it" he referred to was making the situation quite awkward. At once, she stood up and felt that the air was filled with the man's pheromones. Zacharias slid his robe off his shoulder, revealing the wound on his shoulder. Unbeknownst to her, a fine layer of sweat had formed on her forehead. Nervously, her hand trembled, accidentally cutting one of the stitches on his wound. She gasped and said, "I'm sorry. I cut a stitch." "It's okay. Just continue." He raised his head and gazed at her affectionately. Under the gaze of those eyes, Shirley dared not be careless, although she had an urge to cover his eyes with her hand. After finishing the bandaging, she began to pack her things, but for some reason, she glanced at a certain area of his body. Does he not feel uncomfortable? With his qualities, he could have several girlfriends. Finally, she returned to her room, took a shower, and then lay down on the bed. Shortly after, she received a message. She picked up her phone and saw that it was from Imogen. "Shirley, are you asleep? I just arrived here, and I'm feeling a bit out of place. I wanted to chat with you." "I am awake," Shirley replied. "I saw you escorting Mr. Flintstone today. I'm so envious. I hope I can have such an opportunity." Imogen messaged. Shirley reassured her. "Don't worry. Captain Barlow will arrange it for you." At that moment, Imogen sat in her dormitory, gazing at the brightly lit Flintstone residence not far away. That was a place full of majesty and allure. After exchanging good-night messages, Shirley lay in bed, reflecting on her recent recklessness. She decided not to let her parents worry about her anymore. The next morning, Shirley heard the sound of a car outside, so she quickly got up and went downstairs. As soon as she entered the living room, she saw a sexily dressed woman standing there. Jesslyn had arrived. She was about the same age as Shirley, but her dress and style appeared more mature because she was active in fashion circles. "Why are you staying at Zacharias' place? Don't bodyguards have designated dorms?" Jesslyn found it unbelievable that Shirley was here so early in the morning. Being a girl, she was sensitive and prone to overthinking. Could this female bodyguard have made her way into Zacharias' bed? "Mr. Flintstone allowed me to stay here," Shirley replied. "Ha, quite crafty, but rags can never become riches." During their previous encounter at the hospital, Jesslyn sensed that there was something unusual between Shirley and Zacharias. Shirley furrowed her brow as she listened to Jesslyn's insulting words. "Please watch your words, Miss Kurt," she warned lightly. Yet, Jesslyn rolled her eyes and went upstairs, leaving Shirley at her post as a bodyguard. When she arrived at the master bedroom door, she immediately took off her coat and placed it on the couch in the third-floor living room. Intentionally, she tugged at her already low V-neck to reveal her charming cleavage before knocking. "Come in," the man inside said. Jesslyn joyfully pushed the door open. At that moment, the man, who was arranging his clothes, saw her and furrowed his brow. "Why is it you? You seem disappointed to see me, Zacharias." She pouted, thinking to herself, does he think it's that female bodyguard? Such a beautiful bodyguard shouldn't be staying close to Zacharias. What if she successfully seduces him one day and becomes his wife? "This is my workplace, Jesslyn. If there's nothing important, please try to come here less often in the future," he said. "You're always incredibly busy, handling thousands of matters every day. It's hard to see you, and if I don't take the initiative, we probably won't meet for a year or more," she complained. Zacharias had known Jesslyn ever since he was a young child, so he didn't impose overly strict requirements on her in their interactions. Moreover, because her parents had helped his parents, he treated her like a little sister. However, he sensed that after she turned 18, there was a shyer look in her eyes when she looked at him, so he tried to keep his distance. Yet, she still found ways to see him. "Let's go down and have breakfast together. I heard Tony is here too." "Zacharias, can I stay at your place for a few days?" she asked earnestly. No, he immediately refused. "Why not? Even the female bodyguard can stay here, why can't I?" She felt it was unfair. Do I mean less to him than a female bodyguard does? "This isn't a place for you to come and go as you please." As he responded, he headed downstairs while adjusting his cufflinks. Though Jesslyn was not happy, she couldn't push it further. She was smart enough not to anger him and strain their relationship. This way, she could continue being by his side. As Zacharias descended to the living room, he looked at the girl standing at the entrance like a guardian of the door. Suddenly, he felt a twinge of pity. He didn't want her to work so diligently, he hoped she could relax and enjoy her life here. "Come have breakfast," he called out to Shirley. "I'm on duty." "You can go ahead, Mr. Flintstone," Shirley replied, not wanting to dine with him. Seeing this, Jesslyn felt jealous. She stays here and even gets to sit at the same table as Zacharias for meals? Zacharias didn't push it further. At that moment, Tony came downstairs while stretching. He was surprised to see Jesslyn and greeted her. "What brings you here, Jesslyn?" "It's been a while, Tony." Jesslyn was 3 years older than Tony and naturally considered herself his older sister. Tony replied with a smile before looking at Shirley and greeting her. "Hi, good morning." In response, Shirley nodded. Tony also invited her to join them. "Come join us for breakfast." "Please go ahead," she said. At her reply, he was taken aback. Why has my goddess suddenly become so polite? He approached her and reached out to pull her. "Join us. I enjoy my breakfast more with you around."
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.